Hey, what's up, Glazers? Welcome to another episode of Glass GPT. Here with my co-host, as always, Keith, and we have Bryce, the GM at D3 Glass. And today, in today's episode, I'm going to represent you, who's probably watching this, a glazer that either fabricates or wants to start fabricating. And so we're going to talk to the guys who basically cracked the code and got it all figured out. So, with that said, Bryce, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me. My name's Bryce Holbert. I'm as you mentioned, general manager here at D3 Glass in Fort Myers, Florida, tasked with overseeing the factory, which is, as you know, probably personnel, product development, and the day-to-day operations of the glass plant.
Bryce, would you mind just to give everybody else some context? Because most people that know about us now at this point are only seeing us 10 years ahead of where we started. I think to just add some context for anybody who's even willing to get into this, which we're going to start breaking down, I think it would be helpful if you explained, like, what were you doing before this and how did you even get into a position to get to this opportunity?
Yeah, so this is I've kind of navigated a less than conventional path. So Keith, you're obviously aware of this, but I was formerly in the golf business. I played golf growing up and through school
Where?
into college in Granville, Ohio, by way of Ohio State University. So anyway, moved to Florida some years ago, something like 2006 or 2007. At that point, I was naive enough to think that I could, play at the next level. So I moved down here to play on a developmental tour. And in doing so, I needed a place to play. Uh, I started working at a golf course and eventually got into the PGA program, became an assistant golf professional, and was just kind of going down that road. And it was a kind of a dead end road, at least for me at that time. I had more ambition. I quickly found out in moving down here that I wasn't good enough to play at the next level. So I needed to find something that was more sustainable and more mentally satiating than being in the golf business. I always tell people that working in the golf business, everybody else's days off were my worst days. Memorial Day, 4th of July, those were my busiest days. So through networking and maybe a small amount of nepotism, I was afforded the opportunity to at least interview at that time with my shower door for a position because Keith and I had crossed paths. We became neighbors
I'd
actually.
like you to,
So
yeah, I'd like you to just share that story in particular because I really think it is good.
which one in
How
particular?
we met, and then how, because then they'll know how that path forged.
Well,
So,
well, real quick, what were you going to school for, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I started as a journalism major, but switched to marketing.
Oh, snap. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, can
So Keith and I were neighbors, as previously mentioned, and one day I was really new to the neighborhood. I met Keith out on the street. He lived directly across from me. I met him on whatever it was. Just say it was a Thursday night, and I woke up Friday morning. I thought to myself, "This is great. A guy who's at least relatively close to me in age. Maybe we can hang out and have a beer sometime or something." But it was really just kind of a passing conversation. Hey, I'm Bryce. Hey, I'm Keith. And I woke up the next day and my front yard was toilet papered. And I didn't know anybody else in the neighborhood. I had just met Keith the night before. So that was kind of our introduction to um, initially a friendship that obviously turned into a business relationship that I feel really fortunate that we've grown the business relationship, but been able to maintain or even improve the friendship over the years.
Keith, did you do that? Did you TP his yard?
I did. And the catalyst was the first night I ever met him. Bryce is a very, very proud Ohio State Buckeyes fan. So the night I met him, he had a hoodie on with it. And at the time, before we started manufacturing glass, we were buying out of Tuscaloosa. And prior to that, I wasn't even in college football. And I became an Alabama Crimson Tide. And right around the time that I met Bryce, Alabama and Auburn have this big thing. And when Auburn wins, they kind of toilet paper Toomer's corner. And I feel like I just learned about that tradition like a couple months before that. I said, what better way to show my excitement and enthusiasm for this potential rivalry friendship that could be happening right across the street from each other by toilet papering the entire front yard of his house, the trees, everything. I covered it. And it really, I don't think we've gone backwards since.
No, as you can imagine, Brandon, the pranks have just become, more often and more extreme.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all this crazy TP and prank wars eventually led to you working at working with Keith. So how did the interview go, and what was your very first position in the industry?
Yeah, I think the interview, there was actually a few. Initially, I was invited to come in to interview for a position within my shower door, and I think it was an install position or something of the like. And I had some things going on at that time. I was back in school at the time, and I just thought, you know what, at this time in my life, it isn't right. And then fast forward a couple months, and I think another position opened up with D3, and it was a essentially like an office manager role. And I came in and re-interviewed for that, and was fortunate enough to be offered that position, um, and started, obviously within a couple of weeks. And it was really great. It was a complete departure from what I was used to, the world I had lived in. It was a more, at least on paper, it was a more traditional 9 to 5. 9 to 5 doesn't exist in our business, at least in manufacturing, and I learned that really quick. But I was so engrossed in learning something new that 9 to 5 wouldn't have existed in a perfect scenario, even if we didn't have machinery and personnel and throughput issues. That I was so engrossed in it that I was spending, all of the time that I could there just trying to catch up to what everybody else knew. And I think I worked in a semi pseudo office manager role for something like a week before I realized there is a complete deficiency in way that Keith obviously wasn't on site. He was working for my shower door at that time. Doug's brother was Keith's brother. Doug was heavily involved in the business, but he was so deep into it, he just couldn't see the deficiencies. I had a really unique perspective in the fact that I had just started, and I kind of got the 100-mile overview because I wasn't immersed in it.
So let me ask you this: so at this time frame that you're talking about, uh, when you started doing that role, where was D3 at in the process? Did you guys already start your manufacturing, only a few machines, or where were you at that point in time?
Yeah, so when I started with the company, we did have the machinery. The facility was in place.
A
We
smaller
had
one,
a,
the
a
original
much
one.
a much smaller facility. We were in 10,000 square feet. We had 9 people, and we didn't have the luxury at that time. We had a cut table, an edger, a water jet, a CNC, and a small tempering furnace, and that's what we were doing. And it was the company was really in its infancy at that time, and I feel, again, really, really fortunate to have joined it at that time because it grew so quickly in such a short period of time. But yeah, we're talking, early 2015 at this point. So, just over 10 years ago, and small staff, no redundancy in the machinery, very little throughput through the factory. So it was
Okay. So some of these deficiencies that you're talking about, what were some of the common ones that you saw from 100 miles above that you immediately wanted to improve?
really, it was procedural. It was a lot of things that we were really concerned at that time with our glass loss, meaning our yield percentage relative to how much are we cutting versus how much are we throwing in the dumpster, and add on everything that's waste related to remakes and screwing things up. So one of the first things I did was kind of look at, hey, we were pushing every single order that we received from any customer out onto the floor at any time we got it. And consequently, we would get glass we were sending glass out onto the floor that might be due 3 days from now and might be due 9 days from now. And we didn't have the space to be able to properly organize and separate that glass and manage the throughput. So one of the first things I did was say, hey, we're going to start sending the glass out. We're going to batch it by the actual due date. We're going to work on everything that's due next Monday today. and everything that's due next Tuesday tomorrow. And what we lost in yield was really negligible, but what we gained was the first step. That was the first real step to organization. We needed it at that time. We needed it at the time because our lack of personnel and staffing, but also because of our space limitations. We couldn't store 800 or 1,000 pieces of glass throughout various processes on the floor. So bringing that number down to 125 or 150 pieces on the floor at any given point in the day allowed us to really have a kind of a micro view of what we needed to do. We could set goals for our team members, and we could say, hey, we need to get 65 pieces through the water jet before we leave today, and 125 pieces through the tempering furnace. And we were able to start checking these goals off on a daily basis. And it really kind of put us on the path towards getting back to that point where we were hitting our delivery dates and being able to adequately manage staff. And I think it was
So,
really the first step for us to getting on the right path.
so I take it that prior to that, glass was, I assume, being grouped together by thickness to have the most yield out of a stock sheet, regardless of due date. And what you did is you just said we work on only stuff that's going to be due in a set amount of time after that. And that the loss in per stock sheet, the yield, right? I think a lot of people don't understand like that glass, that it comes in giant sheets, and a lot of fabricators want to get the most yield out of a single sheet. And just in order to do that, sometimes they sacrifice older orders and newer orders just to get more yield. And you said, to heck with that. We're going to work on stuff that's due at a certain time point so that we can improve the process. And ultimately, that led to better customer service, I assume, which is 1,000 times better than yield per stock sheet, right? Is that
Exactly. So there was a period of time there where every single day I was proactively calling the customer saying, "Hey, I know we were supposed to deliver today. You're going to see it tomorrow." And you only want to do that for so long. I'm not going to be worried about yield percentage if I have zero glass to cut because I've lost all my customers. So I really don't give a shit if my yield is 50% loss or not. That was, step two in the process because they do, as you mentioned, they make stock sizes, and all of these float companies make 20 different stock sheet sizes. So my goal was to get the train back on the track. And then we can start looking at, okay, let's order rather than 96 130s, let's order 102 130s, 102 144s, or whatever our data tells us after some period of time will give us the best yield. But step number one is satisfying the customer and meeting the expectations that have been created.
Brandon, one thing at that time for anybody that's going, well, that just doesn't make sense that you're willing to sacrifice your yield. And to the people that are questioning that at that specific time, because we were running the retail business and install, consequently, prior to Bryce getting there, we were having a ton of fucking turnover. And for those of you that are not aware, when you're in manufacturing, first of all, it's tough to get people that are committed and ambitious in the first place. But then to burn them out in the first month and they quit and now you have nobody. The unorganization that he was speaking of prior to him was really what was kind of causing that, because they didn't know every day, they didn't know how long that day was going to be. So there's just this overwhelming cloud of anxiety. And so getting organized, like he said, was probably one of the innocuous things that kind of helped the culture there and stop the bleeding from the turnovers, because turnover is an expense that a lot of people, I think, often overlook because there's such a learning curve. They make mistakes while they're learning. They're taking up your time because you're teaching them, so you're not doing something. There's a massive trickle down effect with that.
Yeah, Brandon, to speak to Keith's point, we were when I first started with the company, I would, and I just can't remember because it's been so long and my memory's fleeting, but I would venture to say that our average tenure amongst the 9 or 10 people at that time we're talking months, single digit months.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like Keith mentioned, you know, most of the guys, 80% of the staff had been there 3 months or less. So you're really trying to take this very intricate process. I always tell the guys, we're not making pillows. This stuff is heavy, it's difficult to work with, it shows every imperfection. So you're trying to eliminate as many of the variables as you can and put only the necessary work in front of them. And that was really step number one. But to Keith's point, the other biggest challenge that I faced was at that time we just didn't have the right people. And to anybody getting into this, that would be step number one for me is build a group of 6 or 8 or 10 people that you believe are going to be there for 10 years and prioritize fostering those relationships and the growth within that team because for the that's the building those are the building blocks or the cornerstone of growing the business.
Yeah, so you can't do nothing without your team. Takes good leadership, but also organization, so that when the guys are going in, it's not like every day is a fire. And me being a part of crews like that before, when everything's an emergency and you're getting called down on by your boss because you made a mistake because you're brand new, but then everyone's pointing the finger at each other. So sounds like you were able to turn that around and really build out a solid crew to help with all the stations and all the duties in the process. So let me ask you this. When you first started, were you guys cutting glass by hand or did you have a cutting line?
No, we had a cutting line. We had a Botero cutting table. So we sent our optimizations from the office directly out to the cutting table and ran the cutting table, which, was obviously great, but it was an imperfect system for us. We really weren't in the right building space for manufacturing glass. We didn't have the necessary ceiling height, for example, to bring a truck in, unload with an overhead bridge crane. We were unloading glass trucks in the parking lot with a forklift and a boom. You'd unload a pack, you'd take it as far as you could to the door, and then you would
It was dangerous AF, Brandon. Like for years, we would pray every night that nobody would get hurt.
You would
You know,
transfer from clevis to clevis and then unhook the clevis hanging from the boom. And now you're on the bridge crane and we'd set that down and we'd repeat the process 11 times. Every glass truck brings 11 packs. So we would do that 11 times,
yeah, I was a
once or
part
twice
of
a
that.
week.
And that was the scariest part of working in the shop was being near that forklift with that stinger on it because shit happens and the parking lot kind of had like a dip in some areas. So that was like horrible. So like one of the things that I was specifically looking at as we're looking for the next building is ceiling heights tall enough where a truck can pull straight in and straight out. I saw this at Jim Young's shop in Moffett Glass, and he told me you guys have something similar at your current shop where a truck could just drive in, unloads from the ceiling, and they drive straight out, right? So, starting from there, or like moving from that first building, at what point in time did you guys move to the second building, and what exactly were you looking for in that second building that was going to help the production?
Yeah. So Keith's brother Doug and I spent years working on designing at least the D3 space. I know Doug was involved in other design components of the building, but it was really built around the manufacturing of D3 glass. And he and I sat down and we spent probably, I don't know, Keith, you may remember, at least 2 years. And you're looking at everything, right? You're looking at stub ups for power, how much power you need, where you need it to be. Obviously, going underground is significantly less expensive than going overhead and dropping it, and it's less impactful on your workspace. We were designing trench drains, so our edgers drain directly down into the floor, so we don't have PVC running across the floor. We were designing, as we just discussed, building height, overhead door height, truck bay lengths, even things all the way down to, we know that these glass trucks are, whatever they are, 53-foot trailer plus whatever the dimension of the cab is. Can one of these trucks, can we unload it in the building and it can make a U-turn around the back of the building? So we're looking at parking lot radius. There's so many things that I would encourage anybody who's doing this and wants to scale it. Finding a building that's prefabbed or pre-built is not impossible, but it's if you are going to build a building, take the time to do it because there's still. I had a conversation with Gary, our maintenance engineer today, and he was cussing me about not where we have water and power landing in the same spot. And we've had to add power over the years. So we've had to put electrical panels inside of the building. We only have so much space, and so you can never think of everything, but I would encourage anybody who's doing this and considering, purchasing a building or building a building to really take the time to try to think not even 5 steps ahead or 10 steps ahead. Think of every machine, every process, every belt sander, every drill, every outlet, every hose bib, because and you can't think 5 years down the road. You're thinking 20 years, machinery acquisition. It's a lot.
Damn, that's a lot. Okay. So as of right now, can you walk us through the entire process from when you get an order until it's complete, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So we'll start with monolithic. Our customers send us, they'll email us an order. Our girls in the office will, in most cases, enter that order. Generally speaking, there's enough information to enter the order correctly. If there is a question, they'll obviously reach out to the customer. We enter that order. The girls in the office will send it out to either one of the shift supervisors to batch that order. So much as we discussed earlier, we will pull orders for cutting. We'll pull batches at 4 a.m., the beginning of first shift, and 12 p.m., the beginning of second shift. That will batch all of that like glass together, 3/8 clear, 3/8 low iron, half clear, half low iron, 3/8 reeded. We'll batch them individually and we'll optimize that glass. So we'll put it into an optimization program to maximize our yield. It'll get sent to the cut table. The cut table operator will call up whatever optimization he's looking to cut. Generally, they start with 3/8 clear because 3/8 clear represents 75% of what we're cutting. So they want to get the bulk out of the way early. They'll cut all the glass. I don't know how much you know about our operation. We have a Movetro. So they'll input all of that information into the Movetro. The Movetro will open to whatever bay we need and pull out all of the necessary sheets loaded onto the table. So we're not doing hand loading onto the tables. We'll cut all the glass. Generally, we're producing anywhere between 250 and 300 individual unique pieces of glass every day, about 75% of which require fabrication. That glass will leave the cut table. It'll head to the polish department. Obviously, we'll edge. I think something that makes us a little different. A lot of people are going to edge too longs, seam too shorts. We edge all four. We just believe it's cleaner in our tempering furnaces. So we edge, and then if mitering, if there's miters necessary, we'll miter, and it'll head off from that point to fabrication. We utilize water jets. We've got 3 water jets. And if there's fabrication that requires polish, where maybe on an inside or outside radius, we'll send those pieces to our CNCs. So we utilize CNCs for round tabletops, partial out of squares, K cuts, and we do a
Okay, so
lot. Go ahead.
the vast majority of your hinge cutouts and holes are those done via water jet?
Water jets. So if we're fabricating 75% of our glass, 90% of that 75 is going through the water jet. And then the
Okay.
balance is going through either one of our CNCs. Again, we do some tabletops. We do a ton of partial out of squares. Those are going into our CNCs. And then we do a lot of balcony work, vertical hand railing, parallelograms, really unique shapes that may require, polish on an inside radius to go over a floor tread or something, or stair tread. So we utilize CNCs for that stuff. And then after it leaves the fab department, obviously the last remaining step in the manufacturing process is to go through the tempering furnaces. We've got 2 tempering furnaces that run simultaneous. After the tempering processes, we've got 3 guys on the back of each tempering furnace that they unload every single piece, and they quality control every single piece that leaves our factory. So that's the QC guys will go through every piece. They'll document it that it meets our standard for fit, finish, clarity, inclusions, or lack thereof, really. They'll document it and notify shipping, and then we'll ship it out. And then we're
You,
also
you
producing. Go ahead.
sorry, you said that you had two tempering ovens. Do you have two of everything or multiple of everything?
Yeah, so we're in a really fortunate position in the fact that over the years we do have redundancy in every department. So we've got three cutting lines. We really have two cutting lines, and then we've got a cutting table that we use for digitization. We've got four edgers, three water jets, two CNCs, two tempering furnaces, which is a
And
luxury.
yeah, what is the importance of that? I guess that's what I was getting at. Like, why have redundancy?
Yeah, so the redundancy is nice. On the surface, you'd say it's great for throughput, and it is, but it's a luxury that we've been afforded over the years. 10 years ago, if the tempering furnace went down, the whole operation stopped. If the cutting table went down, the whole operation stopped. So the redundancy, the beauty of the redundancy is if it gives us time from a maintenance standpoint to take a machine offline, schedule it to be offline, take it offline, do the necessary work, get it back online, and we haven't missed a beat. Or if there's unforeseen issues, and these are very complex machines, they're big. Most of our machinery is Italian. So obviously, Italy's 5 time zones away. Having redundancy for the most part doesn't handcuff us or hamstring us to or affect our production at this point.
Yeah, that's incredible. So half your machines could be down at any one time, and you continue moving. So, as being a part of a fabrication shop for years, I specifically remember times when the tempering oven would go down and everything would halt, and we have to call, a neighboring glass company. That, hey, can you please temper our glass or the cutting line? Then we have to cut everything by hand. So when you said the word, we got two tempering ovens. I was like, holy shit, that is crazy. So you can
Hold
run
on.
both at the same time, or have one in cleaning and one running like that. That's incredible.
I want to add to here that as much as is a massive luxury and looking at it now, it's a great benefit for us. Everybody that would want to do that in a factory to take that stress of when one of those machines goes down would love that. But the fact of the matter is there's certain points where you just don't have the money to do that. And we actually were forced into that situation. And I think it's worth saying, once we started manufacturing and Bryce and Doug got everything going and Bryce started going off, my shower door wasn't its only customer. We started selling glass to other people, like a lot of other people. Bryce and Doug designed that building. We're moving over to the building. Everything gets moved over except for the tempering oven. And to take down and then put back up another tempering oven, that's not a weekend project. You're talking 4 or 5 weekends, and there's not one customer that's buying tempered glass from you that's willing to say, yeah, I'll hold my orders for 5 weeks. So we tried to partner with a couple other tempering houses, and 2 of them, I believe, and Bryce can corroborate this, knew exactly the position we were in and just said, man, we hope you go out of business. And we'll get all those customers back and we'll come take all your machinery at an auction. It was like, holy fuck. And so our hand was kind of forced into buying that other tempering furnace, which ended up being a blessing in disguise. It's like Tom Brady being the 6th draft. He's got that chip on his shoulder. And that's kind of what I think was the catalyst for Doug and Bryce to pull the trigger probably a little bit earlier than we would have, because we're just moving into a new building. There's a lot of expense going on. And then boom, we buy the biggest machine we've ever bought in the history of our company because someone else told us, we hope you go out of business and we're going to buy all your machinery at an auction.
Yeah,
No, that's
Braden, it is worth mentioning that Keith's right in that very accurate point. But we were at a point too where there just wasn't enough hours in the day. Our original tempering furnace was small by relative standards. It's 71 wide by 118 long. You could get 2 shower doors in. So you're doing 2 shower doors, 10 minutes, 2 shower doors, 10 minutes, 2 shower doors. And there, we're working overnight. We're working 24 hours and we're still not able to get it through. So all of those things kind of intersected where we needed more throughput. Our backs were against the wall. It was purchased out of necessity because you can't ever turn, as Keith mentioned, furnace off. You have to have one on while you take the other one offline and move it a mile down the road because it was a month to disassemble our old tempering furnace, move it a mile down the street and reassemble it.
Yeah.
Wow. So I understand that D3 has some of the best post polished laminated glass in your region. So can you explain to us how do you accomplish that?
And why aren't most other companies doing it? I think it's important to know because you know why they're not doing it. So I think it's important that you tell everybody because most of the viewers are going to be installers and salespeople.
Okay, so I'll start with the why ours is the best. Ours is the best because to maintain a good post polish, you have to have a really good machine. You're not doing this on a 3 spindle or a 5 spindle Chinese machine. If you want to put a high post polish on a piece of laminated glass, 9/16, 13/16 inch and a 16th, you need a really robust machine. We've got Bavonis, which in my opinion are the best edgers out there. They're 11 spindle, really great machines. To that point, we start with the machinery, but what it really comes down to is the people operating and maintaining the machinery. And we've got really good operators that have been operating these machines for years, coupled with a guy who could be a Bavoni technician now. He could go work on any Bavoni in the world. So the machine is always in a position to be able to impart the best possible polish we can on any piece of glass. And that doesn't just go for our laminate edger. It goes for all of our edgers that are producing monolithic glass. So that's the reason the polish is so good. The people that are running it and the people that are maintaining it and obviously the equipment itself.
You know, Brandon, that machine's so finicky. I mean, a good operator can actually just start telling by sound and the gauges. Like somebody that spent some hours on there can literally tell by the sound that it just needs a little calibration, a tweak. And it's a tough machine to get passionate about because it's just this never ending cycle of polishing glass and it can burn a lot of people out, which doesn't afford them to get to the point where they can start having an ear for the machine. That's, it's
Yeah,
a high learning curve.
it is. So I was just curious about like I don't know. I guess in my brain I was imagining that like the glass would have to be like perfectly like the laminated glass, the two panes of glass would have to be almost identical in size and shape, and that the arris on the side that gets laminated would be like non-existent or very minimal to start, and then it gets laminated, and then it's like perfectly aligned, and then the polish is like I don't know, like it's not as aggressive. So I guess I was like after like the magic sauce to the perfect laminated glass edge for a glass railing specifically.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point, and I hope the guys in the laminate department don't see this because they'll be pissed that I left them out. But you're right. It does start with edge alignment, and it's something that I take for granted because the guys the guys in the laminate department that are actually assembling the glass are doing an incredible job. I've been in my customer's shop. Their shops. I've seen laminate from my competitors, and as you mentioned, it's offset. If you did ever put a post polish on it, you'd never have your wheels touch both individual lights of glass. So it really starts with the assembly and the edge alignment, and just is taken across the finish line with the work that the guys in the edging department are doing during the post polish. Now, Keith, to answer your question, why don't people post polish? It's for that reason, but it's also for the reason that A, it's an additional process, but B, when you're edging glass, you're removing material. You're removing, generally speaking, a 16th per pass of whatever side you're working on. Well, that inner layer is going all the way out to the edges, but even beyond the edges to where prior to post polishing, you've got to trim that excess inner layer. And with Century Glass, it can be a real pain. PVB, not so much. So you've got a ton of labor in just preparing that edge even to accept a polish. If you get to that point or past that point, now you have to actually put it on the machine and you've got to edge it. as you're removing material, you're not just removing glass, you're removing that inner layer, which is incredibly robust. It's really tough stuff. That stuff is going to wrap around every wheel and spindle. It's going to clog every drain. If you have a water filtration or particulate removal system, it's going to clog that unless you really have a good maintenance team and a good plan to get the stuff out, and really good, maintenance even from your operators at an operator level. It's going to present more nightmares than they can, justify. So this is something that we've really grown into. We've got a really sophisticated water filtration system, and we've developed some things internally that remove all of the, not only the glass drying, but it's removing all of that inner layer, that excess inner layer, before it's hitting your pumps that are sending the glass or sending the water back to the machines.
We
That's
could have, Brandon, D3 could easily have made the decision in the beginning to make laminate glass like everybody else and save a lot of time on labor and probably be a little bit more competitive square foot price. But because none of us had any experience in that, when we all saw what we wanted, it just seemed obvious to us that it should be done the way that Bryce and the guys are doing it now. And why would you do it anywhere else or any other style? And most people say, well, it takes longer. All that gunk is getting, like, maintaining those polishing machines is already a nightmare. Never mind throwing in this X factor of the laminate. But knowing what it was going to look like and what we're selling it for, because we're also in the retail business, it's a no-brainer. And I love showing customers what the post-polish looks on our laminate, because most of them go, oh, that's what it looks like? That's acceptable to me, because they're used to having that divot in there, which starts collecting water and mold. And
Yeah. Over in our neck of the woods, there are no reliable laminated glass suppliers that can produce post polished laminated edges, probably for all those reasons. And at the last company I worked for, I was on my way out when they first got their laminating machine, and they decided then that they were not going to do post polish laminated edges. And in fact, I remember one story in particular. I sold a high end, frameless door for one of my high end customers, laminated glass, of course, because we had the capability. I was excited about it. When we got the door, it looked like shit, like that edge, like the areas were too big, misaligned a little bit. And so I asked them, like, can you just render this through the polisher? And they're like, no, we're not doing that. For all those reasons, it's going to clog up the machine, this and that. I was like, okay. So I ended up grinding that door by hand, with her. I did that for my customer. Oh, by the way, that customer is AJ Kirkart Contractors, still my good customer today, almost 20 for those reasons. Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And so we actually order our glass, our laminated glass from out of state, specifically for the purpose of being able to get that post polished laminated edge. So you guys are definitely doing it right.
We've even, Brendan, started mitering our heat strengthened tempered laminate, which is a feat in and of itself. We've gotten to the point where we can put up to a 45-degree miter. I was walking through the factory today and saw some 13/16 low iron with a beautiful 45-degree miter on it.
you got to get a picture of that so we can put it on here.
Yeah. Would you miter tempered or only heat strengthened laminated glass?
We've done both. Generally speaking, the laminates that we're producing, most of our customers are requesting heat strengthened just because of the optical distortion improvement over heat strengthened over tempered.
I think that's another reason too, because when you have fully tempered glass and your paint is only a quarter inch or 3/16, when you remove a 32nd off that edge, it then makes it weaker. So by sticking with primarily heat strengthening, then that's not as much of an issue. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we've mitered tempered, and we've come up with a way to where we can put a 45-degree miter on there and not remove more than a 16th of an inch from either piece of glass.
Yeah, because of the tolerances and the dope ass machine operators. I imagine your machine operators have like a stethoscope like in their ears. They're,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they kind of go like this. Okay.
All right, how about this? What is one or two, like, let's do some weird stats for people to kind of, you mentioned how many panels you're making a day. So let's move that over the course of a month. How much rejection rate? And also, I want to talk about trash, how much trash we throw away.
Okay, so I know these numbers actually because it's my job to know them, but we monitor remakes in two different ways. And a remake to us is any failure, whether we catch it internally or externally. It's sizing, fabrication, fabrication either missing or in the wrong place, scratches, seeds, you name it. Bad edge work. Today, we keep a board and it's a daily running board. We do it by month. Our monthly remake percentage as of today, January, which obviously we're still early into
Halfway
the
through the
month, but
month.
we're at 1.88% internal. Somebody would have to do the math on this, but we sent out just over 5,000 pieces in December, and I had 9 pieces come back from external remakes. Customers said, hey, this piece is scratched or whatever. But, you're talking about 1/100th of a percent or whatever that number is. We're talking about an exceedingly low number that are actually making it to our customers, which is my goal. Remakes are inevitable working with glass, but if we are going to have them, I would rather them be, for our eyes only.
That is an incredibly impressive number. Congratulations. I just started there. I got a question for you, Keith. What are the ethics? Was this ever a conversation? What are the ethics of selling glass to your direct competition of my architectural glass and my shower door?
Oh, this is great because not only did we have this conversation before the business started, we've since had it internally because there's a lot of like components. Everybody wants to grow. But D3's mission in the beginning was to fabricate and temper glass for my shower door. And for everybody else, they could pound sand. That was our mission. And when people were coming to sell us the machines and do their kind of pitch, they would always feel like they needed to over pitch and say, by the way, once all the other glass shops know you have this furnace and everybody's going to want to buy from you, like, whatever. Like, I just thought it was a sales pitch because we weren't starting it for that. You can't help but think, okay, maybe in the future, you're selling all this glass and just printing money. Well, consequently, when the furnace did get plugged in, other companies were calling. And, because I think if you ask 100 glaziers, I don't know how many of them are going to say, we got the best tempering company in the world. That's not everybody. So there's a lot of opportunity. And the one thing that I think what held us, what didn't hold us from growing with outside companies is that wasn't our intentions in the first place. We didn't care if people didn't buy from us because that's not why we were doing it. But once they started, we said, you know what? My shower door cannot handle all the shower door work here in Southwest Florida, nor do we want to. There is more than enough work for every single glass and glazing contractor that's currently in business. There's more than enough work for all of us. Now, some people obviously have a lot of pride in their way, and I don't blame them to say there's no way I compete with my shower door on the front of the business. There's no way in hell I'd give money to Bryce. I'm not feeding that dragon that's trying to beat me out in the street. But there's also a huge segment of the population that weren't just installers that have some business acumen that say, hey, listen, I recognize my shower door as a leader in the industry. And if the glass is good enough for them, it's good enough for me. It's local. There's another segment of the population that says, for every dollar that I spend locally, it's being spent like $7 more out. And if they're not buying from in Naples, Fort Myers, Bonita Market, they're either buying from Miami or Tampa area. So that money's automatically leaving the market. And so then once they met Bryce and saw that it was kind of a separation, my shower, it's not all under the same roof. So it is like a separate entity. But there's certain people that just don't give a shit. They're like, we want good quality and consistency. Damn it, if we have a problem, we want to be able to get a hold of somebody. And all those things they can have with Bryce. So Bryce and his team have acquired a pretty large contingent of outside vendors outside of my architectural glass and my shower door. Now, let's not make any mistake. There's only one top dog salesman selling the high-end laminate glass, and you're looking at him. But Bryce has had some different thoughts on all this over the years, saying, hey, I'm trying to sell to these people, and you're beating them up. So we never use anybody's information for like insider. Like if I if I lose it on the retail side and somebody else gets it, somebody's got to make it, right?
You
And
still get a piece of pie.
yeah, and it helps with. He could speak to it more than me than the yields. Obviously, the more glass options you put into that big Tetris puzzle machine that it does everything, the better. But I think people buy from Bryce and everybody at D3 because they like the level of communication. They love the quality. And if you've ever taken a tour for a factory, they almost mandate that every new customer takes a tour of the factory so they can see the culture and the cleanliness of the factory. Because you go to a lot of these factories, if it's shit going in, it's shit coming out. And so I've been in my fair share of factories. Bryce went on a factory tour before we built ours with Doug. Some of these places are toilets. They're disgusting. And so what do you think the quality of the glass is coming out the back end of it? And so cleanliness is directly correlated with culture. And a lot of these other tempering houses, laminate houses, have been bought by private equity. You know, the original players that, you know, kind of worked their way up like we are, ended up getting bought out by private equity. And all they are is bed sheets to spreadsheets. They don't care about the culture. They don't care about the maintenance and cleanliness. And it's obvious when you take a tour through our factory to see all that. And that's only because of the culture that's been created there by Bryce and his team.
That's incredible. So we're coming up on an hour, and so I just want to land the plane. Uh, one more question, Bryce. Where do you see yourself and D3 in 10 years' time?
This is really good. So I personally see a second manufacturing facility somewhere, maybe East Coast, maybe up the East Coast somewhere. We're doing quite a bit of work in the Carolinas and in that area. So something there, for myself and my people. I kind of, I because I have this vision and the desire for this business to grow. I see us still being at the bottom of the pyramid. There's a lot of room for everybody to grow. So I'm excited just at the thought of being a part of what I believe to be the inevitable growth. So if you were to ask me, or if I were to answer that question directly, I would hope that in 10 years that we're going to have a second manufacturing facility that we're equally as proud of as this manufacturing facility, where I'm splitting time between both and getting to spend time and go to work every day with some really great people like I get to do, each and every day here.
Well, right on, Bryce. Thank you so much. I'm going to be calling you. I'm going to save just the pictures of my space that we're looking at. See what you think. Thank you so much for being on and educating us. Oh, you know what? There's one more question I missed. I'm going to sneak it in there. What kind of tracking system or tagging system do you utilize these days?
Yeah, so we utilize it's an all-encompassing software. It's called Fenavision Core. So it's everything from order entry to optimization to what the guys are seeing out on the floor. A lot of our CAD drawing is going through there, and logistics goes through their RMAs. So it's an all-encompassing software that I would recommend called Fenavision.
Okay, right on. All right. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. Any questions for me or anything you want to add?
Offers open if you ever have any questions, or I know you're out of town, you're not local here, but if you ever get the opportunity to come down and tour the facility, obviously it's an open invite, and I think you'd really enjoy it. It would lend some credibility to the conversations that you guys have on here. But to you or any of your viewers or subscribers, I would extend the invitation to reach out to me. We weren't fortunate enough to get a lot of the answers, and you know a lot of it's proprietary knowledge, but we're not putting people on the moon here. We're making glass, so
Nobody has ever put anybody on the moon, FYI. That has never
Uh,
happened. I
I
swear to God.
tell my customers I'm going to seal their wine cellar like a fucking. I was like, I'll make your wine cellar as tight as a spaceship. Like you can put this thing on Mars, it will not leak air.
I am happy to help anybody who wants to go down this road with and impart 10 plus years worth of knowledge that I have and maybe save them the 7 or 8 years worth of headaches that we went through,
There's
or at
going to
least
be
some of
bleeding
that.
ulcers, but the question is, can you mitigate how many bleeding ulcers there's going to be
Right.
during this process?
Right.
You gotta be prepared with the preparation H,
There
or
you
whatever.
go. Yeah, Bryce has plenty of toilet paper.
Gotta get a bidet, man. That's the way to
Yeah.
go. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Check out Bryce. Check out my architectural glass D3. Yeah, just hit him up if you want to take a tour. I fucked up because I missed it last time like an idiot, but I'll have an opportunity again. You will see me in person sooner or later, one day.
Maybe we can schedule one of these things where we're doing it from inside the factory. We got like from my office, you can see a lot of the factory. It's glass office.
I would
So
love that.
Yeah, I had the opportunity and I fucked it up. I'm sorry, Keith, but no.
We'll get you on there. We're gonna get a sponsor, and that'll pay for you to come out. We can shoot live. Bryce, how can anybody, if anybody in Florida or Georgia, Carolinas wants to get a hold of you at D3 Glass, how can they get a hold of you?
well, first, I'd recommend that everybody check out our website, d3glass.com. But if anybody needs to get a hold of me directly, I don't want to regret doing this, but they can reach out to me at my email, bryce@d3glass.com.
Dude, you're gonna get a bunch of indecent
No shit. This is going to
Yeah,
be,
can't
yeah,
emails.
wait.
Emails.
yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Mean tweets.
yeah,
Mean
yeah.
tweets.
I was going to say, if you're gonna send indecent pictures, just make sure it's female, or it's getting forwarded to Keith.
all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Peace.
All right, guys. See you. Thanks, guys.